I've coached high school football for over 30 years. 23 of those years I was a head coach. And I was a head coach at 4 different high schools, 3 in the state of Virginia and 1 in North Carolina. And during that time period when I took over those high schools, those schools were in a state where they weren't winning, they weren't successful on the field executing, it's just the game of football. And I had to have a concept of what I wanted to teach them to be able to turn the program into a winning program or a successful program. Successful meaning we can play the game well. So what I've determined is that if you focus on winning and you constantly talk to your players about winning, there's scenarios where they understand maybe they're not going to win, and it affects their mentality of being able to play the game and play their position the way that they need to play it, and it affects their positive outlook on the program. So what I've determined was that if you emphasize playing well and not winning, then that's a characteristic that they can do all the time regardless of the score. For example, let's say you're playing in a game and your opponent's better, or you just haven't played well in the first half of the first quarter and you're down 14 points. A lot of the guys on the team, if the emphasis isn't to play well, they'll start looking at the scoreboard and saying, well, we can't win because we're down 14 points and we're not running the ball well, we're not throwing or catching it well. So they start to lose their confidence, and then they don't play well, and then you have no chance of coming back and winning. However, if you emphasize playing well, and that becomes your point of what you expect them to do for all 4 quarters, then it doesn't matter what the score is. Doesn't matter if they're up 14 points, doesn't matter if they're down 14 points, doesn't matter if they dropped a pass, doesn't matter if they missed a block. It doesn't matter if they've thrown an interception. You can always tell them those things are going to happen in a game, but we need you to play well the next play, the next repetition. And so if you keep that as a mantra or a requirement of your players and of your program, you can start to see that they're going to play more consistently better, because the emphasis is on playing well and not on winning. Because the only time you really matter, the score really matters for the players and the coaches, is when it's 0-0. So in order for me to get their mindset off of what the score is, what the quarter it is, whether we're ahead or behind, I only talk to them about playing well. And that meant even if we're ahead 21-0, we still want to play well the rest of the game. If we're behind 21-0, we still can play well and get better during that game. So I always made that an emphasis. And I've been in all those scenarios. I've been in the games where you're behind 21, and I say, well, we can't wait till Monday to get better. We can get better now. So forget what's happened and just go out and finish the game and play well the next series and get better. And then in the other, conversely, in the other one, you're up 21-0, and you can tell them, well, it doesn't matter what we've done behind that past. We need to play well for the rest of the game and make sure that we are consistent at what we're trying to accomplish. So playing well becomes the focus. And the reason is how can you win consistently if you don't play well? So, for example, if you just talk about winning, you've superseded the fact that you have to play well to win. So we want to emphasize playing well and not winning. And why do we want to do that? Because how can you win consistently if you don't play well? So winning is the result, whereas playing well is the process. And you've heard people talk about that all the time, about, well, it's the process, and sometimes they don't explain what the process is. And the process is playing well. And I'm going to give you some details down here that describe in more detail what that process is or what playing well is. Okay? So for us, playing well meant we used an acronym that I made up called TED. And TED stands for Technique, Effort, Determination. So if you ask one of the players that played for me, they would know exactly what TED is. And TED is the requirement, or TED is what allowed them to play well, or is what the determinant that we use for did they play well. Okay? And that was, we evaluated their technique, their effort, and then their determination. So how would you assess that? How would you assess T.E.D playing well for each position? So what we have here first is the quarterback. And what I've done is list the position. I've listed the technique, the effort, and the determination that we would use for grading them or for assessing did they play well in terms of that game or that repetition. So for the quarterback, you have to execute the play correctly. Obviously, he's the one that gets the play in. He's the one that tells everybody what to do. So that executing the play correctly not just involves his particular techniques, but getting the whole team lined up right and making sure everybody gets off on the snap count and that he controls that. Effort would be carrying out fakes. You know, if you're running a run and play and he hands the ball out, does he sprint to the outside or wherever you're going to have him do? Does he continue to do that or does he stand and watch? And then for determination, the quarterback, does he lead the team? The quarterback is really the one that is in charge of the encouragement and the mindset of the offense and even for the entire team about keeping them focused on playing well. So we would grade him on those particular three things. Then we would say running back, what technique would he do? Well, he needs to be on the right track to the line of scrimmage, whether he's running an A gap track, a B gap track, or a C or D track. How's his track in that? His effort would be he's got to go full speed to the hole. And then his determination, what we would assess is when he gets hit and he's at contact, does he win that contact? Does he go forward at contact? Does he get a couple extra yards at contact? So that would be how we would assess T.E.D for him. For a wide receiver, it would be, does he run the right stem and the right route steps? Meaning if he's supposed to run a post and he's got 7 steps to get to that top of his stem, does he do that? Then his effort obviously was, as he's running his routes full speed. So a lot of times if they don't think they're getting the ball or if it's a run play and they don't give their full effort to go full speed, then that would obviously not be conducive to what we want. And then for determination, does he dive for a ball that's low or behind him? Does he lay out? And then does he accelerate to the ball? In other words, does he give up on a pass that's thrown to him? Does he make sure he feels like his body shows that he can catch every single pass? Okay? And then for offensive line, their technique was, are their right steps and their hat placement in the right place? Is their effort, is their aggressive punch at contact? They just put their hands on the guy or are they really aggressive punching? And then for determination, is there a final push if he separates? So for example, the offensive lineman's locked into him and he starts to see him and feel him leaving. Does he give him one final push to push him off balance so that the running back can make a cut or so that defensive player can't run full speed to the ball? When we talk about D-line, how's his alignment and is he quick off the ball for his technique? For his effort, is he aggressive with hand contact? Once again, as you see with the offensive line, we want them to have aggressive hands and grab and lock up on the offensive lineman. So does he do that or not? And then for his determination, does he run to the ball carrier or the ball location? That's obviously some point of emphasis that everybody would have on defense. And you'll see that's pretty consistent for the linebackers and the defensive backs with regard to their determination key. For the linebackers, alignment, and do they make a good key read for their technique? Do they full speed key reaction? In other words, you can tell whether the linebacker is confident of his key read if they go full speed based on the read that you gave them. And that would be what the effort is. And then obviously run to the ball carrier, the location for his determination. As a defensive back, how's your alignment and your good key read? And then are you full speed to your key reaction? So these two are very similar as linebackers and defensive backs because as a defender, you're always really playing and reacting to where the offense puts you. In other words, your alignment has to be good. You have to make sure you know what your key read is, and then you've got to react to that key read full speed in order to fit in the run or the pass. The linebackers have to fit run and pass, and the DBs have to fit run and pass. They all have gaps to fit. They all have areas that they have to cover for pass. So that's why you see these are pretty much the same. And then obviously as a defensive back, you have to run to the ball carrier or the location in case he breaks the line of scrimmage. So this is how we would assess, are they playing well, and using TED, technique, effort, and determination, as a characteristic. You could obviously come up with other technique, effort, and determination things that for each position group, but those are the things that we've categorized and we've classified as our process to get the result we want, which is winning. Okay? The other thing you can do is you can grade these things and give 1 point for each technique, effort, and determination, so that basically they have 3 points per play. Now what happens is if you give them 1 point for each thing, you'll see that perhaps the category of technique, if they played 30 plays and could have 90 possible points, maybe in the technique area they only had 10 points. But the effort area they had 20, and the determination area they had 15. So it can tell you which of these areas that they're not performing well in. And obviously as a coach, and particularly experienced coach, you can discern that just by watching the film. But it gives the player a specific area that he can focus on and improve. And there's not 10 areas of improvement. It's 3 areas. Is your technique good? Is your effort good? And are you determined to make a play? And do the things that would allow us to have the result of winning. And so by playing well and by using TED as our acronym, the players can remember it, the coaches can grade it easily, there is a specific requirement for each category as to what we want them to do, and then it's not dependent on the scoreboard. It's not dependent on, oh, we're down 21-0, so we're not going to win. So it doesn't become a mental block or mental discouragement at any time that they're playing, because all we're asking them to do is play well. Because we know that you have to play well to win consistently. You can not play well and win, but usually that's against opponents who are inferior to your team and your players. So in order for us to play and win consistently, we know that playing well comes before winning, just like the process comes before the results. So what I saw happen in the programs that I took over, and even in the programs after I retired as a head coach and worked for a couple of my fellow coaches running their offense, what I witnessed happen when we emphasized playing well and not winning was it wasn't an instant turnaround in the programs. In other words, the first year we had to install this TED concept, and we had to create a mindset where that they believed that if they just play well, that winning will come and that the results that they like and want to happen would come. But by year 2, and people saw us playing well, we would finish 4-6, 5-5, sometimes 6-4. But all of a sudden the players would notice that there was more people coming to the games. And they said, Coach, we aren't really a winning team. We haven't been in the playoffs yet. But why are more people coming to the games? And I said, because people will pay to see you play well. And they understand that if you play well and you don't win, they still understand what playing well means, even if they don't understand the nuances of all the little things that you're doing with regard to your technique, effort, and determination. So that encouraged them to play well because more people were coming, even when the team was a 500 team. And usually by year 3, we would see we'd make the playoffs, we'd be a top 10 team in our region, and we would start contending, and that would build the mindset and the enthusiasm for the program, and more players would come out. We started having more success, but we did that by creating a mindset of let's just worry about playing well as a process and let the winning take care of itself as a result of our playing well. And we made sure that they understood that TED was how you played well, that your technique, your effort, and your determination on every play was what playing well meant. So we used the concept of TED, technique, effort, determination, in every aspect of the program. You just don't have to use it for football techniques or playing the game of football. when we went in that weight room, we expected each lift to be done with the right technique. We expected them to give maximal effort when they're doing the repetitions. And then if the last 1 or 2 repetitions is hard, we expected them to push through that. So we carried that over to the weight room. We also carried that over to when we were teaching their speed and agility, which is there's always a technique for way you're going to do your footwork, if you're going to go through ladders, or if you're going to do plyometrics, how you're going to jump, how you're going to land. And then when you're doing speed training, how you're going to run. So there's always technique to every skill that you're going to teach your players throughout the year. There's always an effort. How fast do you want them to do it? The intensity you want them to do them with. And then obviously the determination part always means that the last few repetitions, the last few sprints, the last minute and a half of your conditioning is going to be a challenge for them. And so we were able to use T.E.D and teach it not just during football season, but year round with whatever we were doing, whether it was lifting, the speed and agility, or any other type of activity that we were doing with them. We constantly mentioned about T.E.D, what the technique, the effort, and the determination was for that particular skill. The epitome of teaching the playing well versus constantly talking about winning happened in my 10th year at one of the high schools where I was coaching. The previous year, we had made it to the Final Four and had lost in the Final Four to the eventual state champions, who went undefeated, won 15 games, which was the first time in the state's history that anybody had won 15 games and gone undefeated. So the next year, we're in the final round of 8, and we didn't play well in the first half. In fact, we were losing 28-10, and we had given up 2 60-yard touchdown passes and a 60-yard run, and we'd really only given up 1 drive where the opponent had been successful moving down the field on our defense. But we had jumped out of gaps, we had lost coverage on a couple people, and so we went in at halftime. And this is a group of young men that had been with me for 4 years. So they understood what T.E.D was. They actually had lived T.E.D because this same group of people got us to the Final Four the year before. And now we're back in the Final 8, trying to head back to the Final Four. And so they understood that. So when it went in at halftime, obviously they were disappointed. You could tell by the look on their face that they thought it's 28-10 and we're not going to win. And I reminded them that they'd been in a program that only focused on playing well and not winning, and that the expectation was we had another half of football to play, and that I expected them, our coaching staff, our fans expected them to play well that second half. Regardless of what was going to happen, we as a program put our mark on playing well. And I wish I could tell you that we came back and won the game, but we didn't. We lost 49-43. But we outscored our opponent 33-21 in the second half. And we lost because we had to go for an onside kick to try to get another possession, and it happened to take a bounce right into one of the frontline defenders' hands, and he split us, and he ran for a touchdown, and that ended up being the winning touchdown that we lost. But after the game, I told them I couldn't have been more proud of what they did, because here they were trying to get to the state championship game. They didn't play a good first half, but they showed everybody their character because they had been trained on what T.E.D was. They have lived it, and they went out in the second half and played extremely well and made our program proud, made their parents proud, made our community proud. So that was the epitome and highlight of what I think you can get out of focusing on playing well and teaching them the T.E.D concept and not just focusing on winning.